Howdy, everyone. Welcome to This Old Vegan. My name is Merlene Vassal.
A great deal more about fish than we thought they had going on in our ignorant past.
What about relationships between fish of the same species? I know that, some fish travel in schools, but do they have families and social groups?
Yeah, absolutely they do. Social groups, you talk about schools and shoals and I like the phrase shoalmates. We have soulmates, they have shoalmates. Fishes do recognize each other individually. That's been shown in a number of studies. Of course, once again, we're speaking about over 30,000 species. What applies to one species may not necessarily apply to another. Nevertheless, it's certainly widely known that many species of fish, we already know they're unique. They're as unique as we are. They're individuals. They have personalities. No two are the same, of course. I mean, like the proverbial grain of sand. But we're now talking about living, breathing, feeling organisms, not pieces of sand. But they are unique, and studies show that they, depending on the species, archerfish, for instance, recognize each other by their face. They recognize us by our faces. They've been tested on that. The fact that they squirt water to catch insects in the air, you can present them with touchpads over their tanks, which innovative scientists have done, presented them with different pictures of faces like you and me, or up to 40 different faces with one familiar face, and the rest of them they've never seen before. They'll squirt the water at the one that's familiar, provided they've been trained to do that by being given a reward when they make contact with something that they've seen before, and they don't do that with something that they haven't seen before. So these kinds of studies show individual recognition, and that's a foundation for making friends, having allies, having individuals who you work with. There are some species that have family groupings, as you imply in your question. A good example would be the anemone fish, or the so-called clownfish, famous in the is it Pixar films? Nemo, Finding Nemo, and
Yes.
Finding Dory. Dory isn't a clownfish, but Nemo and his family is. And they form family groups with a hierarchy of males, one female at the top. And it's a very matriarchal society in that sense. So feminists, including myself, are pleased to see examples of that. Amazingly, these species, some of them can change sex, and in the case of the clownfish or the anemone fish, that's what happens if the mama fish at the top of the chart, if she dies or leaves or something happens to her, the top male, the next male in the queue, he becomes a female over the course of just a few days. So he becomes the top female, and then all the males move up one step in the chain below. It's kind of funny in a way. I mean, I don't think they have any say in this happening, but like, did I ask to become a female? Or anyway, that's what happened.
Incredible.
So these abilities speak to society. They speak to a social network, a social milieu that is much more complex and sophisticated than we typically think. That we just often think of them as just willy-nilly. I mean, you look at a migrating school of 10 million sardines, and they all look kind of the same to us. And it's not as if every sardine knows every other one. But when it comes time to mate, for instance, they're choosing mates. They're picking individuals. So it behooves these creatures to be able to recognize and remember individuals over time.
Wow, that's fascinating. Well, tell me, how did you become so interested in fishes?
The cheeky answer would be that I was born, because I was always fascinated with all animals. So just by dint of coming into this world, I was destined, I think, in hindsight, to become an ethologist, or at least a biologist. But I do write books, and in my writing, I try to be an advocate for animals. And I was at a vegan restaurant in Washington, D.C., when I had the idea of writing a book about fishes. And that was one of those kind of rare epiphany moments. It just struck me as a book that needed writing. There really wasn't anything out there. There were books about fish, but they were mainly academic books that don't make it into the mainstream. And even then, they took a less, shall I say, dare I say, progressive stance on the matter of fish sentience, and the argument that we should give them moral weight than I look at it as. I say we should do that. Again, this book was not just a book of expurgation, a book of showing what they do, but it's a book of advocacy, like all of my books. So once I thought of that, I was I'd seen enough in my work as a biologist and an animal advocate to know that there was some very interesting research out there on the lives of fishes. And when I start a book, I just immediately start accumulating stuff. I don't worry too much about the organization. I let that sort of organically come to light as I accumulate information. Some topics drop off, some of them come in. And I very soon realized that there was a lot of rich material out there to plumb for this book. And I also had some personal accounts, and I looked for stories from other people, because we love stories. People love stories. And stories touch us in a way that some of the science can go here, but if you really want to affect people here in the heart, in the feelings, stories are very powerful that way. So the book is a combination of the science and the storytelling.
So speaking of stories, do you have one that you can share with us?
I have many, but let me pick this one. I lived in Florida for a couple of years before moving back to Canada, where I now live. And I would snorkel on the beach, swim and snorkel typically 2-3 times a week, because I lived very close to the ocean, and I love the ocean. I love swimming, and I love fish, and it was a terrific place to swim and snorkel, because just off the shoreline, I mean literally 10 to 20 yards, there's these rocky shelves, and rocky shelves are like magnets for a lot of species of fishes. They feel safer there. They got a lot of place to hide, so they would gather there, and there'd be snappers, and there were nurse sharks occasionally. Even saw a loggerhead sea turtle there once, but lots of different fishes swimming around in the shallows. One day I was snorkeling, and out of nowhere, a little fish, barely more than an inch long, kind of greenish color, very pretty. I'd never seen one like it before. Swam along with me, and was kind of like, it was so small that I had to really move its tail very fast to keep up with me. I'm not exactly fast, but I have fins on, and I'm a lot bigger than this little fish. But it was able to keep up with me and stayed kind of near my mask, and I was quite touched by this little fish, quite taken. Not literally touched. I don't know if we ever made physical contact, but it was just very close. Clearly oriented to me, and for whatever reason, either thought I was something safe to be with, or maybe it was curiosity. There's some evidence for fish curiosity. And I was probably in the water for 20 minutes, and there were times when this fish disappeared, and then I'd turn around, and there the fish was again, and came back, or never left, or maybe swam behind my head or something. But it was still there. That little fish was, I should probably say he or she, I don't know which gender, but not just an it. This is a being. This is an individual. And was still with me when I got out. I actually felt kind of guilty leaving the water, because this little fish seemed to be a little bit attached. And I have to confess, I was beginning to grow a little attached to the fish as well. But, I'm an air breather. I had to get out sooner or later. So I bid my goodbyes to that little fish, and I hope he or she is possibly still having a good life down there in the South Florida coastline.
Well, that actually leads me to the next question, which is, do you think that humans and fishes can be friends?
I do. It's a great question, because it brings up the difficult topic of keeping fish in captivity. I do write about that a little bit in the last chapter of my book. And it's a troublesome thing, because the aquarium fish trade is not very fish friendly. There's high rates of mortality, and we really shouldn't be taking these beautiful little bits of wildlife out of their natural habitats in the Philippines or Hawaii or where have you, shipping them around the world, and then they end up in a glass tank in someone's living room, say. Nowadays, in our society at least, we have the technology. We can turn on the TV and have an aquarium or a live cam, or the internet, a live cam showing fishes on reefs, and just as beautiful. We don't need to be capturing them and doing that. But that people, nevertheless, with people having fishes in captivity in the aquaria, they sometimes do befriend them. They often form attachments. I write about some of these in my book. A pufferfish named Mango, who had about a 10 or 11-year relationship with his woman partner, the companion. He was companion to this woman who would come home from work and interact with him in certain ways. Another woman who had a discus fish, who she'd pet the discus fish, and the fish would lie in her hands, in her cupped hands, and she'd caress the fish. I'm not making this up, and neither of these people. You can watch YouTube videos of people petting fishes that come back to be petted again. They can even, as trust, they lift the fish out of the water and then gently toss the fish back. The fish clearly is enjoying the contact. I'm not trying to advocate keeping fishes in aquariums, because it may be partly that the fish is bored or lonely. If people do that, probably better if most species are social and to give them company. But really, the best thing we can do for fishes after not eating them is to not keep them in tanks. But it does show they're sort of mostly anecdotal, because scientists I don't think they've really formally studied the relationships people can have with their pet fishes. In the human animal studies field, which is in the humanities, you might find some studies in there that people have done something about that, but I haven't seen them. But certainly anecdotally, yes, the answer is very clearly yes. People can form friendships with fishes, and it's bidirectional.
That's wonderful. You said a couple of things that really made me think. One is I really love the idea of just viewing footage of fish in their natural habitat on a screen, rather than having the fish kept in captivity in your home, because they are beautiful to look at, but they're, I think, a lot more beautiful to look at when they're free.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very sympathetic to that statement. I didn't mention that the death rates are very high. 1 in 10 maybe survives to destination, and of those within a year of captivity in a tank, only about 1 in 10 are still living. So it's about a 1% survival rate over the first year. So it's been likened to cut flowers, but of course cut flowers are plants. They're beautiful, but there's no scientific evidence they feel pain. And while we should respect all life, we do know that fishes feel pain and can suffer, which makes it all the more compelling that we not take them out of their wild habitats. And as you say, watching a live cam in the ocean or on a reef is I find much more gratifying, partly because of knowing that they're free. And freedom is one of those intangible but very vital aspects of a life well lived, is to have your freedom.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. I think that this is a wonderful note to end this interview on. And what I'm going to do is put up on the screen pictures of the various books that you've written, as well as your website address, so that people can learn more about you and can check out your very many books.
Thank you, Marlene.
And thank you so much. Hopefully I can have you on my program again.
I look forward to that.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye for now.
Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching the video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.